art display that is being shown at Canterbury Cathedral behind me there. Obviously it's done as a provocation of some sort. Now the idea is they've graffitied the interior of the cathedral, and they've asked minorities, unbelievers, to put their questions. What would they ask God? One of the questions here I'm going to read: why did you create hate when love is by far more powerful? Hopefully the people in Canterbury Cathedral are giving good answers to this, biblical answers, and understand that God didn't create hate. I'm not sure. Maybe this is just a way of people expressing themselves. Another one: I don't understand this question. Why do we blossom when we relinquish ourselves to the world? I've got no idea what that means. So another thing, this really provoked me to think about rightly ordered loves. And it was something I thought C.S. Lewis had introduced, a thought that he had. But this is from St. Augustine in The City of God, where he says, I've got a quote here for you. But living a just and holy life requires one to be capable of an objective and impartial evaluation of things, to love things, that is to say, in the right order, so that you do not love what is not to be loved, or fail to love what is to be loved, or have a greater love for what should be loved less, or an equal love for things that should be loved less or more, or a lesser or greater love for things that should be loved equally. And that's him from The City of God on Christian doctrine. And it's something that I've been considering a lot for a while, about how the Holy Spirit changes our lives and gives us a sense of how we should love things, how we should enjoy beauty in the world, and a sense that I think that through the process of sanctification that we understand the right order of loves in our lives, and we consider those things. How do we love God at the highest, and what does that mean for our family, and what does that mean for church, or our wives and our children? What does that mean for our church family? What does that mean for our community around that? And what does that mean for the nation we live in, and so on? So how do we rightly order loves? But it also means things like the natural world. How do we appreciate God's creation, or man-made art? And I'm talking about the cathedral here. So why this provokes me was effectively because here you have things that are out of place. Now, graffiti in our experience belongs, say, on subways and out of the way. Now, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of good graffiti artists. It's a talent, right? It's a human skill, but it has a place. And what's interesting is this church, this Canterbury Cathedral, which of course is famous and huge part of English history. The people that are running it are pandering to minorities, or people they call minorities. They have a Marxist lens through which they see the world. So this is not a Christian lens. So when you hear language like minorities and things like this is alien to the church. We don't have minorities in the church, in the sense that the bride of Christ is a blood-bought love of Jesus Christ, and we are his people. And we see throughout the New Testament the church being made up of all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, including in the list of all kinds of races. Although let's say biblically there's one race, so don't fall into the leftist trap of talking about race too much, because really we're one race, one people. But there are those who are the sons and the children of God, and there are those who are not. But I'm talking about the children of God here. And the one thing, we have a list of, all these people, such as were some of you, and he's, Paul might list off a bunch of sins and issues that people had, and this is what you were, and this isn't what you're not. And then he might list off, there's the one where we're listed off of what's one of the groups of people that make up the first century church. There's the Scythians. The Scythians were slave owners, and you would have slave owners, and then they were known as brutal slave owners, and they would be in the church, sitting next to, listening to the teaching, next to former slaves, and these are one body now. So that was just get minorities out of the way. This is much more of a leftist Marxist thing, and probably everyone involved with Canterbury Cathedral and these guys here are certainly unbelievers, and whether or not any of them have answers to any of these questions. Some of them are very basic questions, and some of them, well, that was just confusing. So, so what I'm saying here really is, it provokes me in a sense of, okay, so here we have a church which just wishes to pander, to minorities, to the culture, and this is what you get. You get a centuries-old building, absolutely beautiful, basically filled with unbelievers, and it doesn't really matter. It's a building, right? But in the rightly ordered things, right? So when I say it doesn't matter, it's not right at the top. We've got a hierarchy of things that we should appreciate, and we are designed to appreciate beauty in nature and in art, and it is necessary for us to determine the right place of things. And so I'm sure this is obviously a great controversy of people saying the church shouldn't have this graffiti inside it. I think it's a helpful thing that they've done. They've maybe exposed what they don't understand, and maybe they don't have any answers to these questions, and they don't know what's appropriate for a building like that. And I think it's another way of having angry, discontent people who want to dominate another culture potentially come in and spray paint the place. Did they get answers? Maybe, right? But the list of groups that they are pandering to. Have a look at this. It is in the Telegraph, I think. I picked it up in the Telegraph as well as Arts News, but you have a look at it. But here's some of the questions I wish to share as well. So they ask the question, what is the architecture of heaven? Well, you can engage with that, right? I mean, what does that really mean? Does everything have a soul? So sort of a pantheist question. Do they know the answer to that? Do we not answer that? Because it might offend someone if you say no, not everything has a soul. The culture would be offended. No, you cannot graffiti our church. Well, no, we can't say that, can we? Does our struggle mean anything, right? Why are you indifferent to suffering? Interesting questions, right? I mean, that sounds like a bit of this is a question to God. Why is God indifferent to suffering, right? I mean, here's a church. No doubt there's a cross on the wall somewhere and some reference to the gospel. Does our struggle mean, these are questions that could open up and talk about sin and where we really are before God, and why we struggle and what's going on in the world around us. So I do hope that that's an opportunity for people in Canterbury Cathedral to do that. But this was just a surface response to what I saw, in a sense of, I thought, yeah, this is a helpful image to think about rightly ordered loves. That building is beautiful and would have taken decades to build, if not longer. And it was built by craftsmen who just lovingly produced that. And when we see the graffiti on it, it's jarring, and it's intended to be jarring, right? And intended to be that way. But have a think about that. Rightly ordered loves, which St. Augustine was talking about there. And I think that's a really helpful framework in which we can see our lives. We don't have to, riotously react to this stuff because it's just intentionally provocative. If you read the list of people who are involved with this, then it's fine. Like it's washed away. The whatever that kind of Christianity that the Church of England or Canterbury, they haven't understood some fundamentals, and maybe they can't. If you've got to spray paint your questions on the wall, can't you just go up to someone and ask them? Maybe the questions aren't important. Maybe it was the graffiti that was important, and then they try to come up with what sort of questions would we ask God. Maybe that was it, Anyway, I hope that was useful, particularly St. Augustine, and what's going on in the UK it continues to confound reality. But I always believe that things will reach their bottom. Look at the political framework under which people are living and slaving away. It's often at the moment the left and Marxism and Karl Marx is dominating people's thinking. They're not presuppositional, so they haven't thought back, well, why am I thinking this way? And they read what they've already learned, and they read that into scripture, and they think God is a leftist or a Marxist. They wouldn't say that, and they probably aren't aware of that. But when you talk about this sort of social warrior, social justice stuff, which has invaded the church quite heavily, that it's coming from somewhere. And of course, this is often rooted, we would say, back to Karl Marx, and in an interesting time of England's history, where you had Charles Spurgeon and he would preach against Marx. Marx avowedly said that his socialism was designed to, I quote, overwhelm Christianity. And that's why socialism isn't an equal and opposite to capitalism. Capitalism, I'll just give you a quick, capitalism is a limited number of economic rules and principles. Marxism and socialism is a life-encompassing whole world view, and it intends to govern cradle to grave, skin to bone, every human being. And it is intended by Karl Marx to overwhelm Christianity because he saw that as the greatest threat to him and his beliefs, and absolutely is. So be aware of the roots of your beliefs, be aware of the roots of what, you know, belongs in England and what doesn't, you know, what we should be honouring God. And it's just an image, you know, it's just a picture, but it's helpful. You know, we can attack it with graffiti and we can try to bring it down with the shallow stuff that we spew, but ultimately there are going to be solid foundations, and build them in your lives. It's not ethereal out there. Solid foundations are found in your lives, and go talk to people and give them the answers to these questions in England when they're asking. Even if they're not asking out of an honest sense, you've got a conversation there where others could listen and hear, you know, who is God? Why is hate in the world? Did he create hate when love is more powerful? You're talking to God in this case, then he is love. So he knows what he's doing. So yeah, thank you for listening.